Hey guys, some of you have been looking at this older video of me creating buttons in the design system and have been taking inspiration from this, but obviously I wanted to let you know that this video is outdated. I've mentioned that in the comments as well. So I'm creating a new video to replace that, just so you can obviously get the latest information. One huge thing that I want you to know is this button structure no longer works. And the reason for that is you don't have to use the base button anymore. The problem with base buttons now is Figma has introduced component properties. Component properties do not apply on base components or instances of base components in the larger component, which is why we no longer use the base structure for most of the components. So anything that you see on my videos using the base component would no longer be applicable. So let's just go ahead and actually create the component. Well, I can basically just use this base button to actually start creating it, but since I want this video to inform other new designers as well, I'm just going to go ahead and actually create the video from scratch. So for now, we're going to create a button. I'm going to say this is going to be our button. This is the small size. The small size is, I think, 32. The medium size is 40 and the larger size is 48. That's fine. I'm going to include an icon. So I can just say arrow minus left. Let's just go ahead and include, or maybe angle minus left. Chevron minus left. So let's just include a chevron minus left here. I'm gonna resize it. Now, as you can see, I actually have that instinctual habit of using the scale plugin, but I no longer have to do that. I can just press K and I can resize it from here. I can say the size should be 16 pixels. In height it should be. So I'm gonna press K and then tab and then 16 pixels. I think this probably should be fine, but maybe it can even be smaller. So I'm going to make it 12 pixel in width. Okay, so I think this should be fine for this particular size of a button. Let's just go ahead and actually duplicate it, convert this to chevron right, and just basically give this a background of the primary color, which is going to be, let's say, 300, and make the text white. I'm going to make the text for both the icons and the button white, and let's just give this a border radius of 4 pixels. Obviously, if you've decided what the border radius throughout your design system is, probably just better to use that. I'm just going to use 4 pixels for my button. So this is the main component. So this is the button component. Obviously, this is the small variant, so I'm just going to add /small. Now, a few things that you need to do is, one thing that you need to do is you need to go here and you need to say that the icon left. So this is going to be, you need to go, I'm just going to show it again. You need to go to the layer. In the layer, you need to create a Boolean property and you have to say icon left. And you can leave it true by default. That means it's going to be visible by default. We are going to disable it later on, but we don't have to do it right now. Similarly, I'm going to go to the layer and create a Boolean property for icon right as well. And now if you actually have a look at this icon, we have icon left and then we have icon right. And as you can see, if I hide them, they're hidden. The button can function without those icons, so on and so forth. One thing though, that usually people resize the button when they're scaling it or making it fill container or making it larger. I usually want to make it center aligned. So even if a person is doing that, that should be possible. Okay, so now this is our small sized button, which actually just works fine. One other thing that I would like to do is I have a bunch of icons on the right and the left. I can also go ahead and I can say that I want to create a component property. A component property allows you to switch instances, switch components. So I can say the preferred value for this particular thing. I'm just going to make it icon left instance. And the preferred value, I can set preferred values as well. And I can say the preferred values for this should be maybe the left thing, maybe I want to have the home. So I can select the icons that should appear, maybe arrow minus left. Obviously I want to probably select all of the left ones, maybe this double left. That's all completely up to me what exactly I would like to select. Maybe I want a user icon as well, so I'm going to select the user icon here as well, maybe the user plus icon, and maybe these icons are sufficient. So the benefit of these is, and you can do this for yourself as well. So the benefit of these is, let me actually just go ahead and see if I actually created that. So again, I think I didn't create it. So I'm just gonna go again and I'm gonna say home and then left. Let's just go ahead and actually do a few so we don't have to waste a lot of time. So user and then user plus. Okay, that's fine. I'm gonna say icon instance left and then whatever name you want to give it. Okay, this is fine. Now as you can see, I have this icon instance left. Now if I click on it, I see my preferred values. If I want to see all of the icons, I can do that as well. I can go into my local components, I can go into icons, I can see all of the icons that I have. But what this helps me do is it helps me configure those icons directly from the top without necessarily going into the button component and double clicking on the icon. So that's really good. I can directly just configure it here. And if the icon left was not visible, then as you can see, the additional properties connected to that icon left would also not be there. So that's again amazing. One other thing that I don't like with this button component, which is making this video a bit complicated, but I think it's really nice to look at it, is the fact that if I disable these icons, you can see the button looks very small. It looks, the padding on the left and the right is not something that I would be okay with. Maybe I want an additional padding on the left and the right. So what I can do is I can create an auto layout around the text content. So I'm gonna just name it text and I'm gonna reduce the top and down padding to 0. And on the left and the right, we have an 8 pixel padding. I'm just going to give it 8 pixel, and then I'm going to remove the space in between from the button component itself to, space in between from the button component itself to 0. And now at the top, the button looks the same, but now if you actually have a look at this button, it looks much better because the space is built in with the text of the component. So now I can do icon left, I can do icon right, everything looks good, functions pretty much the same, but if the icons are disabled, the button still has considerable spacing on the left and the right, and the total spacing is 16 on the left and the right, despite the fact that the original button component has a left and the right 8 pixel padding. So that's just something that I personally like to do in certain cases. Okay, so now that we're done with this, let's just go ahead and actually create our different variants. Now before we do that, I'd like to highlight it's really important that you do all of this configuration on the initial component that you're creating before creating the variants, because now that I'm going to create the variants, I'm going to scale things, I'm going to move things around, so on and so forth. If you don't do that before, then you would have to link all of these icon buttons and these icons and the properties and all of that individually again, or you can select all of them and then link them, but it's going to be a lot of work. So always try to do that on the initial component that you've created. I'm going to now go ahead and create a new variant. This is the new variant. Let's just go ahead and actually make it larger. Let's just change this property name to size. So the size is going to be the default thing that I want to update by right now. So the size in this case is going to be 40 pixels, obviously. So in this case, unfortunately, it's 30. So I wanted 32. So I'm manually going to scale it to 32 because I don't really care about this padding top and bottom. I am going to make this button fixed height. Similarly, I'm going to make this 40. I'm going to remove this padding on the top and the bottom on the button. And I'm going to increase the padding on the left and the right in this case. Maybe it should be 12. And I think the text should be slightly larger as well, maybe 14. Again, I'm not using the correct typography style, so I'll just go ahead and use them. So this should be base semi-bold. This should be small semi-bold. So let's just go ahead and actually increase the size of the icons as well. So maybe the icons should be 14 pixels here. Okay, so let's just go ahead and change that to 14. Okay, so this should be 14. Now let's just go ahead and do the same thing here, 14. This sounds good. And I think this looks good as well. Maybe this spacing also needs to be 12. Or maybe that's a bit too large. So I'll just keep it at that. Maybe let's just keep it at that and we can adjust later on as well. And then here we have the larger size. So this is the medium. Let's just go ahead and update the name as well, medium. And now with the larger size, let's just go ahead and actually increase the size, and the button's text should also be larger. So let's just make it semi-bold on the 16 pixels. Let's just make this 16 pixels as well, 16 pixels as well. Now as you can see, the width and the height of the buttons are pretty close to the font size, but in some cases that may not be the case. Maybe your icons are a bit smaller, maybe they're higher in weight, so on and so forth. So that's not a rule. You should ideally try to do this with a with how it looks visually and whether it looks balanced visually or not. So now that we're done there, let's just go ahead and increase the spacing here. Maybe this should be 14. And let's just increase the spacing here as well. This should be 12. So before we go forward, let's just actually have a look at how all of this looks without the icon buttons enabled. And this should be large as well. Okay, all of this is good. Now I intentionally, or maybe not intentionally, but I actually made a mistake. And the mistake that I've made is I did not create a property for the icon instant swap for the icon right. So now if I go here, as you can see, I can update the icon left property, that's fine, but I can't really update the component on the icon right. I have to double click on the icon and then update it. So that's again not really a great way of doing things, which is why I mentioned you need to structure these things initially. So I'm going to say icon instance right, and I can have the preferred values, whatever it is that I want, but let's just go ahead and not mess with that right now. So I'm going to select both of these and then I'm going to link them again. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to say these are going to be linked to the icon instance right. Now if I have a look at it, icon left, icon right, if you hide them, obviously nothing is visible. One thing that I do, however, want to do is I'm going to go to the main component, the main button component, and I'm going to move these icon right and icon left properties to the bottom. Maybe icon left should be at the bottom at icon instance left should be at the bottom of icon left, and icon instance right should be below the icon right. So now it should be fine. Icon left, icon right. It's also structured a bit well. So these are our different sizes for the buttons. I'm just going to go ahead and scale all of this. Let's just go ahead and actually create an auto layout because that actually helps us position things a bit better. And now I'm going to obviously remove the auto layout again. Now we have to create these different states. So we have a hover state, the active state, and the disabled state. So for the hover state, since I already have the colors created, I'm actually just going to choose all of these three things. And first of all, actually, I'm going to create a new variant, and I'm going to say this variant is going to be state. So this state, the one that you see in front of you, is default. This one should be hover. I'm going to say hover, and then I'm going to change this color to 400, and then I'm going to duplicate these again, and I'm going to say active, and I'm going to change this color to P500. One other thing that you can do to make these components really nice is you can create interactive components or make these interactive components. So if you go here on the initial button, you can say while hovering, this button should convert to this one, and when you click on this button, for example this hovering button, it should convert to the other thing. And you can obviously have smart animate as well, you can have dissolve, and you can have any effect that you want. I'm not going to do that with everything, obviously that's going to take a lot of time for the interest of this video, so let's just ignore that for now. So again, this is P500. Now that we're done with this, we can obviously create a different button component as well. Let's just go ahead and do that quickly. So you want to create another variant now. The variant is going to be the type of the button. By default, the button that you see in front of you is primary. So let's just make it primary. And one other thing that I noticed is I created a disabled button, but the disabled button pretty much looks the same for all of them. So I'm not sure if we actually need a disabled button for every single state. So instead, what we can do is we can actually create a different variant for it instead of actually creating a different state or making the disabled button a different state if we want. Otherwise, if we want the disabled button to actually be this same thing, we can just go here, we can duplicate it. We can say the state should be disabled, and maybe in this particular instance the opacity of these buttons are hidden. If we want to do it differently like that, then obviously it makes sense to actually have it tailored per the type of the button. But if all of the disabled buttons are going to look exactly the same, then you don't need to create them for every single type differently. So without going further, let's just go ahead and actually create the other type that we have, which is going to be secondary. For the secondary type, let's just go ahead and add a stroke. The stroke is going to be P300. The background is going to be none. the color for all of these things is gonna be P300 as well. Now, one important thing I wanted to let you know. A lot of people may ask, why did not I disable the icons? I just don't want the icons to be there all of the time. Well, neither do I. I can just go ahead and disable them by selecting both of them and pressing hide. And since all of these are linked together, I can easily just disable them by going on one thing. But if I disabled it initially, the problem with that would be is if I now go ahead and change this secondary button, I'm gonna, let's say, remove the fill, convert this text into P300. Now if I enable the icons here, as you can see, the icon colors would be the same. It would be white because the icons weren't visible and I did not update the color, which is why I did not disable the icons intentionally by default. That's the reason why I did not disable them, because I have to do some changes to the icons for the different states. So now I'm going to do that again. I know I'm taking a lot of time, but I want you to think about these things when you're doing them and really pay close attention. So now I'm going to change it to P300, and now as you can see, all of the icons are updated as well, which is pretty much exactly what we wanted. Now I'm going to do the hover thing again. So let's just make the state hover, and the fill on the hover state can be slightly darker, maybe. So this is way dark. Definitely I don't want that. Maybe something like this is going to be fine, but I want to check it on a white background and see if it's fine, which I think it is. I think this is fine. And then for the active state, what we're going to do is I'm going to go and change the state to active. For the active state, it's completely up to us what we want to do. Maybe here I want to change this to P500 for everything. And if I want to change it for everything, I am not going to change it by going here. I'm going to change it by going here. And that's just going to make the button darker on the outlines and on the text. So that's maybe something that I actually wanted to do. Now that that's done, I can do the same thing pretty much for the success and the danger buttons. So let's just go ahead and actually do that. For those who want to skip this video, skip to the end, because I'm just going to share how to make this look good with the PropStar plugin. So I'm still going to do this just in case people want to actually have a look at it. So sorry, not the state. I'm going to configure the type. So this is going to be our success. One other thing that I want to do is I want to make the type the topmost thing. Then I want to have the size. Then I want to have the state, because usually when using the buttons, you already have an idea of the type that you want to use. And then later on, you can configure the state and the sizing. So you can have your properties aligned from top to bottom based on their priority and based on your judgment level. So now we have this success thing, and I'm not going to actually do this with this particular button. Maybe I want it like this. So let's just go ahead and actually choose a solid button for the success to duplicate the success button. And I'm going to make this the type success. And in this success instance, I can obviously use the color S300. Personally, I don't like the S300 button. I don't think it meets the right contrast. So what we can do is we can obviously update our colors as well, but we can do that later since all of these are already linked with all of the components and stuff. Even if we update the colors directly on the icons on the main color palette, obviously it's going to update here. But since I just wanted to show you how it's done, I'm just going to go ahead and still do it. So again, this is the hover state. So hover, now as you can see, the last is already selected automatically because that's what I'm changing. And then this is the active state. In the active state, I can obviously again make it as 500. In the hover state, I can make it as 400. And that's pretty much it. Now, obviously, if you want to configure all of these by default, save a lot of time for yourself, why don't you just go ahead and duplicate this, change the type to danger, and just go down. The S300 should be what? It should be danger 300. The S400 should be what? It should be danger 400. The S500 should be what? Danger 500. And that should automatically work. So that's how you basically create a button component in the new in Figma with component properties. As you can see, the amount of items we have here, like I'm not even sure how many, like they're quite a lot. And now with the improved component properties, we obviously have a very simplified number of these components. One other thing that would be even better when using these would actually be to use the design tokens plugin. If you use the design tokens plugin to actually set the padding, set the height, set the width, not the width, but the height probably, and the padding and the spacing. You wouldn't have to, let's say if you wanted to update the padding in the small sizes, you wouldn't have to select all of them one by one and then go ahead and update them or whatever. You would have a single linked style created in the design tokens, and you would just update that, or multiple linked styles created in the design tokens plugin, and you would just update that. So that's also something to keep in mind if you want to make your component extremely powerful. But now since you've done that, you can actually go ahead and open the PropStar plugin. So I'm going to open the PropStar plugin. Let's go to our plugins panel. Let's search for PropStar. So this is the PropStar plugin. I'm going to click on run. It's going to ask, do you want to create an embedded table or a standalone table? It's completely up to you. An embedded table actually gets created with the same component, and a standalone table gets created on the right. Maybe let's just go ahead and create a standalone table for this. So now that I've created it, as you can see, it's running now, and we have all of this beautiful stuff with all of the different variants automatically created. Obviously this is just for developers, maybe for people who want to have a look at it, so on and so forth. It's not really these are just instances. So as you can see, these are just instances. If people want to use these directly or check out what these instances look like, they can do so. But as you can see, we have these different instances, different possibilities, one with the icon left button enabled, one with the icon right button enabled, so on and so forth. Additionally, if I now go ahead and say that this icon should not be visible by default because I usually don't want to use the button with the icons, I can go ahead and hide them, and I can go ahead and I can say that I want to open the PropStar plugin again. I'm gonna create the standalone table again. Once I do that, it's gonna take some time, and now as you can see, it actually updated the same table, so I don't even have to mess with removing the older table, creating this new table, doing whatever. I can just keep on running this again and again, and it's gonna do my work for me. So that's pretty much it, and I hope you like this video. Obviously I'm gonna just go ahead and include this whole thing. Let me just go ahead and actually include it here instead of this whole component thing, and that's pretty much it. Let me know if you found this helpful, and if there's anything that you particularly did not understand. I'll see you later. Bye.